We all know that North Myrtle Beach is the place to be if you want to experience our state dance, shag. And we all know that before 1968, the name North Myrtle Beach didn't even exist. But here are some facts I bet you didn't know.
I learned to shag when I was 12. And my sisters taught me because they needed a dance partner at the sorority house. I did not realize I was dancing on the boys' foot until I was in high school, and this fellow that I dated that was a very good dancer told me I was on the wrong foot. But anyway, so I corrected that. Danced even through in college, dated fellows that shagged, some from Myrtle Beach, things like that. But when we got here, Phil and I were so busy raising our children that we didn't go out a lot as far as going to the clubs and all. But Harold, we did go to Fat Jack's, which was, you know, a scene where everybody came, and Harold's across the street, excuse me. Harold's across the street, which was the old barrel, which was next to the pad. And that's where we started the original OD Shag Club. We were charter members of that. And we were one of the few couples that danced. And so Harold asked us to give shag lessons at Hats, as we called it, Harold's across the street. And so that was so much fun. And everybody got really into that. And it gave couples something to do. I mean, this was a town that was starving for couple things, you know, so because we just didn't have a lot going on. And so here was a new, exciting thing we could do, listen and dance to the music that we've always loved from high school through college and everything. And get to enjoy something that was real indigenous to our age and everything, you know, being, in fact, the state dance, which I'm very proud of. I was there with Bubba Snow when they signed it in, and Dick Riley when he signed it in as the state official dance. It was a very special moment. It really was special. Harold and I and some others were there, and it was just meant a lot to all of us. It did.
I had two jobs in the 50s, and one of them was for 3 years I worked at the Cherry Grove Pier. For 2 years selling bait or managing the pier. They call the person that worked in the place selling bait and all the manager of the pier, and various equipment. But so on my spare time I would 16 all reel and a great big rod, and if somebody would catch a stingray and leave it on, I'd leave it on the pier. I'd go get it, and I'd cut the wings and tail off, and it's the best bait in the world for shark. So I hook a triple hook through it and throw it over the end of the pier. It's a 1,000-foot pier, Cherry Grove Pier. And when I hung a shark, I would wait till he stopped running, and then run all the way down the pier and down about a quarter mile down the beach, and pull him in. And then when he got in the breakers, go out, grab his tail, lift it up, pull him out of the water. You know, when he get his tail up, you're safe. So I did that a number of times. Hung one of them up. Every time I catch them, I'd hang them up near the tackle shop, and people would come along and look at them and all, and ooh and ah about them. And this one guy decided to kick this shark, and he swung back and almost bit the guy's leg. And I never did it again. But that wasn't the story. The story was that I wanted to tell you was that I hooked one time and ran a quarter mile down the beach like normal at 2 o'clock. Never forget it. At 2 o'clock, and it was gigantic. And this sounds like a joke, but it's not. There's no punchline. I'd really been, and it was 150-pound test line on this great big rod. I'd reel him in until he'd get almost to the breakers, and they just take off again, and it would just whiz, you know, and when he'd come out of the water, and it was amazing. And I know that the record was caught off that pier, and this might have been the same one. It wasn't long after that, and Pooh was down there, as a matter of fact, on the beach, and 200 or 300 people on the standing up, looking down from the dunes and all, and Dick McLaughlin was Pooh's brother, came down and asked me after about an hour, asked me if I needed some help, and so I said sure. So we took a handkerchief, and one would pull the line, the other one reeled, and they'd get near the breakers and run again, and just Merlin Bellamy had a 30-30. that he was going to shoot him if he ever got close enough, but he never would get close enough. And but anyway, after 3 hours of fighting him, he was doing the same thing, no change. And he had it was a 10-foot steel wire leader, and when he came out of the water, he twisted and it broke the line. And I was on the line. I wish Dick had been, but I was, and it broke the line. It almost had to be the same one. I have never seen such a shark. He was that big around. I mean, just gigantic. It almost had to be that one that they caught.
Well, I've spoken about Tillman Pier, and that was where the best waves were. Don't ask me why, but you know the piers tend to be where you go surfing. And I had a 9-foot 6-inch Hobie Cat fiberglass board. I was hot stuff. Now my friend Phyllis Permenter, she had a 1968 Mustang, and she was hot stuff too. So we would take her 1968 Mustang and put my Hobie Cat surfboard on the top. I think it was a Hobie or Hobie Cat surfboard on top, and we would ride around, and we were real hot stuff. But I did actually surf, and I love to surf. Bill Bellamy, who was a boy I grew up with, and has still surfs to this day, and we all started surfing together. So, but I can remember before I got my surfboard, before we were driving, and I can remember walking down the beach. I'd go on the beach at 11th Avenue North, and I'd walk down to the pier at 2nd Avenue North, and the wind might catch me, and I was very slight, I was a young teenager, and the wind would catch me. I'd have the board under my arm like this, and the wind would catch me and spin me around. But, the waves here have never been very good. But I did learn to surf.
I guess the biggest impact, in my life and our generation was Hurricane Hugo, and all the trauma with that, and the evacuations and the trouble getting back in and all the damage. And I remember officials coming from Columbia and asking me to escort them through because, I could get a pass. I mean, they could get a pass, and I knew the area and everything, and I did a lot of that. Different times, different people and everything. But I remember doing that drive with the officials and having to drive around mattresses on the boulevard and furniture and roofs. And we were probably really down there a little too early, to be honest with you. But being, that they were state officials, we got to go down there. And I remember driving by Gary Loftus. He was standing out in front of his hotel there, the Bar Harbor, I believe, trying to get some work done, and he was trying to get the water pumped out of his parking garage. And I remember, Bob Lyman was tourism director then, and Marion Edmonds was assistant, and they were there, and they got out, and I mean, it was just the saddest day, and everybody had, and then we went to a meeting later, but I remember there was while everybody was just about as down as you could be, the devastation and what it was going to take, what it had done to our tourism industry, and what it was going to take to build that back and to get all that business back and get everything put back. While there was all this dread and disappointment and pure heartache, I think, there was still that spirit, that we did all that morning, and that afternoon we went to a meeting about how we're going to get this back, with city officials, Myrtle Beach city officials, and of course Ashby Ward and tourism leaders, and the morning we were in despair, and that afternoon they were ready to do what it took, and Mr. Lyman was there as tourism director, we're behind you, we've got funding, we can get some funding, we can match some funding, we're talking about that. And we even went down to Polly's Island with the island split in half as far as we could go. I mean, they still had National Guard down there. I mean, this was like, a month or so later, and they still had National Guard down there. And it was just terrible. And immediately after you go, I was at home, and the Highway Patrol, I don't live far from the center, and the Highway Patrol came to get me the day after you go. And he said, Wanda, you've got to get to the center. And I said, what for? Who's there? And he said, it's packed up there. And I said, well, who in the world could it be, you know? Because nobody could get to us. And what it was local residents that had driven back in and had nowhere to go. They couldn't get across the bridge because it wasn't safe for them to get across the bridge yet. And they just congregated at the center, you know, waiting to get permission or whatever to get back into the beach. And, you know, and they were all upset. It was, you know, it was just a trying time.
So as you can see, we're hard at work documenting history for the future North Myrtle Beach Area Historical Museum. And here's one more fact. We need you. Come join us in our effort to preserve North Myrtle Beach area history.